Hey, welcome back, everybody. It's time again for another edition of Health Talks with Dr. Trinh. The one show, maybe the only show that shows you the path to a healthier life, one conversation at a time. And today, well, we got a great one for you. Dr. Trinh, set us up. Who you got?
All right, thanks, Pa. Hey, everyone. I want to welcome you guys and introduce you guys to my friend, Joyce Lynn White. I think she's calling in from Florida. Is that right?
Yep, St. Petersburg, Florida.
St. Petersburg, Florida. And we're going to chat today about the art of well-being, which we know we all need in this crazy last 3 years of the pandemic and all the mental health issues that's come on lately. So Joyce and I met through, what do you call it, a mentorship program, coaching?
Coaching, leadership, mentorship. Yeah.
Yeah, whatever it is through
A hangout.
Yeah, mastermind. That's what we should call it. Yes, we're part of masterminds and we're in the same group together, and that's how we got introduced. But Joyce is part of something really, really cool that I have started to check out recently. Joyce, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and about what the projects you're doing?
Well, thanks, Dr. Trinh. This is really fun being here. I love the title of your show. I love the theme that follows the title. It's a wonderful thing to talk about. A little bit about myself. Let's see, my backstory is, which will become relevant maybe in this conversation, is I was a really isolated child. So I sort of grew up like a little island inside of a family way out on a dirt road kind of thing. That's the kind of story. I only talked to my horse and my dog, it felt like. So that part of my story might be coming into play a little bit later. But I found my way out of that, found my way into education, became an educator, and moved my way sort of in the ranks there to change systems in education, statewide and nationally, from reactive systems to proactive, positive systems. So I really enjoyed that for a lot of my career, and the kind of action research on the job we got to do as we went around and interviewed staff and teachers and created different systems for people to flourish, actually was the purpose. And the people were the staff and the students. And then I sort of transitioned out of that, developed my own business, my own consulting business. Then more recently, since 2017, I've been a founding team of this company called TheGoodLife.ai. And TheGoodLife.ai, we are I'd say, holistic digital personal development coach. So this is like having a mentor or a mastermind and an individual in your pocket. So you have a digital coach that can help you live your best life.
Wow.
Can I ask a quick question? So that's such a loaded question, your best life or well-being. We all sort of nod and we go, yeah, I want to have well-being. I want to have my best life. But do we really know how to define that? Do we really know what that is? Sometimes we think, well, my best life, I've got to be rich. I got to be famous. I got to be something here. Does it start by defining those terms? What is your best life and what is well-being?
Well, from a coaching perspective, Paul, your best life is discovered from within. So you know that the best, and the coaching system is to help you bring that out and discover what that is for you. That's the process. And then the second part of this question was, define well-being. Was that it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you get to do that too. So this is a process of personal discovery and growth. It's a journey. It's a never-ending process of growth, and we often revisit the same things in our life and sort of blossom a little bit further. And a good coach can help you do that.
Because I think that one of the things that holds people back, maybe me included or whatever, we have some vision of what we think our best life is. And maybe it's built around money. Maybe it's built around success. Maybe it's built around family. I don't know. Maybe it's built around a whole bunch of things. But at some point in life, as you get older, you say, maybe that wasn't the most important thing. Maybe that wasn't the best thing for me. Maybe it would be better if I lived simpler. Maybe it would be better if I don't know, did something different. I think we don't know how, we assume that everybody knows what's best for us. And I'm not sure we do until we really spend some time.
Right. Sometimes that hardest journey is digging down inside and not looking to others to answer those questions for us.
Right.
And I've found that it doesn't always happen when you're older necessarily. Like that is kind of a maybe normal thing that you think. You become these age of awareness. But did you not see? I did. I saw a lot of people going deep during COVID and the pandemic. They were forced to quiet themselves. And sometimes we have the fight or flight. We want to run away from that, or we decide to go in and figure that out and sort of sit with it and discover what that is for each of us.
And I think we had to prioritize in a way we hadn't before. Before we had time, we felt like we had money, a lot of us, felt like we had, and all of a sudden we were forced to relook at everything here. We couldn't go out. We couldn't do things. We had to survive with less. And sometimes people, like going to an office. Every business said we got to have everybody come to an office and we all got to gather and we got to control them and we got to monitor them. And then they said, a lot of people said, maybe that's really not best for me.
Yeah, maybe we don't have to do that. Right. Maybe we don't need to do that to be able to function. Right. So it was a great time of enlightenment. Yes, confusion. Yes, stress, but often less distractions.
I think that's the key, less distractions.
Less distractions, more quiet, and, am I comfortable with this? The questions came up for each of us.
And do we want to go back to the way it was? For many of us, the answer has been no. The Great Resignation, the rethinking of work. Yeah.
Hybrid and remote work. The discussions are deep and broad on how to do that.
So who decides what's best? Is it us, with each of us in our own lives, or is it some outside entity, our society, our government, our neighbors, or whatever? I mean, there seems to be a balance between the greater good and our personal good, and that seems to be a debate that's always going on. Many people said, I'm not going to wear a mask. I'm not going to get things. I don't like it. I don't want it. I don't feel comfortable. And they're like, well, what about the greater good? Well, the heck with the greater good. We've lived for so many years on my personal good, my own personal freedom, my own personal, it's about me, me, me. And at some point you have to balance that with, as Dr. Trinh does all the time, what about the others? What about the community as a whole? Has that changed? How does that play into all of this?
Well, I haven't thought about that.
Because I think that goes to well-being.
It does go to well-being, and it goes to the discussions of people that hearing more voices at the table and not being uncomfortable with that.
Yeah.
So in the case of, let's say, an organization or a corporation without the entire government involved, let's keep it a little bit smaller, large but smaller, rather than just the top down, having a more collaborative approach, listening, and digesting and negotiating, finding a balance of what can work. But that requires some systems to change to do that, because you can't quite stick around square peg in a round hole. So you have to accommodate or change the systems so they can receive these voices or input and then adapt to that change.
I guess what I'm getting at is Dr. Trin's talked about this a great deal. I mean, here's a man who, I'm not going to make him blush, but he spends a lot of time thinking of others, helping others. TongueOut and other sorts of efforts where he's trying to give back. And he doesn't tout it or talk about it. He doesn't do it for fame or fortune. He does it, I suspect, because he believes that I'm here to help others and to give back and to pay back. He's a child of immigrants, came here under tough circumstances, and his life seems to... His son, for Pete's sake, grew up in an affluent Orange County and decided to give back and join the Marines. That's not something most kids are doing today here. They're already thinking about how I'm going to maximize my income as soon as I get out of college here, or pay off my student debts or something here. So there's a balancing act there. We've talked before in Asian societies, children, you may want to do this, but you have a certain obligation to the family, or you're taught to believe you have an obligation to the family to do what's best in their interest too. So maybe I really wanted to be an artist, but maybe I should be doing this instead because I need to help and contribute to the family. That's a counter narrative to what the Instagram world, look at me, it's all about me. And so I think that in balancing well-being, too often we just think it's all about me. my well-being, what I want, and without, do we have to balance that? Are we getting back to a more balanced approach that we got to look at it in a holistic sense, not just what's good for me, but what's good for my family and good for others around me? And does that moderate or change my sense of well-being?
Well,
Community versus
I
self.
actually want to ask Dr. Trinh about how well-being, but I'll make one comment before I ask you that, because he brought you into this, and I'd like to hear how
I would
this
too.
balancing of well-being, but maybe you'd like to hear some of my thoughts first, so you can then contribute on that.
I'm sorry I'm being a bomb thrower this morning here about that.
I have found in my career, I've worked with a lot of behavioral diagnostics. So you're mentioning social media. And when I used to teach some things to staff, oftentimes that the noisemakers or that crisis comes right in our face. We see that and we think that that's everything. So let's say this is a fire drill at a school. All of a sudden there's fire trucks outside, something's happening. So I would tell the staff, remember where you're going, put the other hand out there. And if you know on a daily basis what your foundation is, where you're going, i.e. lesson plans, things like that, but where you're going, then when these things happen and they're in your face, you can shift your gaze and remember where you're going. Just look at those other 5 fingers. Don't look at this crisis right now. And then it's easier to get back and you don't get off your wobble. I'd like to say, Paul, that all that we see that gets our attention in the media is not really what people are about. That's the 5% that are making a lot of noise. And we look at that 5. I don't know that 5 is a real statistic.
Right.
I'm just
a small
there.
number. Yeah, right.
Yeah. I'm not giving stats on that, but that is the small percentage of people that are getting a lot of attention. 90% on the attention, 5% of the population. But there's a movement, a grass swelling of the tide the tide raises all ships right now.
Yep.
People have learned about giving to themselves and giving to others on an altruistic way, not giving material things, but time, talent, and sometimes treasure, sometimes money, but it's not necessarily money. I used to help out with the Heart Association, and my little slogan was, anybody can do something for 5 minutes. In 5 minutes, you can make 5 phone calls. In 5 minutes, you can do this. In 5 minutes, you can do that. So I give examples. It doesn't really take a lot of your time to build in giving as part of your kind of well-being plan, personal plan, because you integrate it in your daily activities. It's not another thing. It's part of life as we know it.
Definitely part of wellness. Sometimes in order to find yourself, you have to kind of give yourself away. And we find that when we take, for example, students around the world with our nonprofit TongueOut, whether it's in Haiti or Peru or Vietnam or in Mexico, our students who are usually either high schoolers or college, they go with the intent of, I want to change the world. I want to make a difference. I want to be able to use what I have as a 16-year-old, 17-year-old, 18-year-old. But, they go out there and when they come back, the person that's most changed is themselves.
Yeah.
And they have a deeper appreciation of the meaning of life, really, and what we take for granted, and that life is not about just materialism and the accumulation of stuff, but just a bigger vision of what that is. And that all falls into our mission of creating well-being, of wellness. I want Joyce to chat a little bit about the app or the software that you're a part of this team that's creating. I thought it was really neat. I had a chance to kind of pilot it. I kind of want the world to know about it.
Oh, thanks, Dr. Trinh. That's great. I'm very proud of the team first, the people in this company. I'm proud, I'm honored, and I'm happy. All those things. It's a pleasure to work with this team. And I'd like to say, well, I've been involved in kind of a legacy project. It's a passion project with some great expertise. So our co-founders, Stephanie Frank and Bryce Pullman, are tremendous experts. And I work on the team I'm on the founding team with them and another fellow, Cliff Edwards. So the software, the Good Life, is actually, if you can kind of imagine things that we've been talking about. And okay, in your example, Dr. Trent, let's say you're a college student and you go out and you're kind of going to change the world. Now, this comes from a real story of like one of my daughters. So on a trip, and then we're kind of met with the hard facts that it isn't quite as altruistic as we thought out there. Sometimes there's some bumps in the road, and maybe all these people aren't real nice to me, or something happens, and you might wish you had somebody to talk to. So with that in mind, we developed, when people get to these hard bumps 24/7, 365, we don't always know when they're going to happen to us, and we don't always know when we need to sort of process it. But how can we provide something to people that we can help them reduce their loneliness, reduce their stress, reduce their confusion, so that they can have more clarity, a healthy mindset, and just to be happier? We want people to be happy. So we went about that mission. And this was born from a story of one of our co-founders who found herself landed in the hospital after she had been a caregiver of a husband and a parent, and just very stressful life. She sort of landed herself unhealthy in the hospital and wishing she had somebody to talk to privately, not wanting to go so far as like, I need to go into a healthcare provider, but I just need somebody like right now, right here, right now. So that's what this was born out of. We married positive psychology with smart technology and developed what is now the first personality-focused, behavioral science-driven coaching application, which means you get on the phone, you get on your phone, and you get involved in sort of a text-based chat with a digital coach. So it's always conversation-based. So you're always talking to someone. And different things happen along that journey, but you're always talking through text.
And what's it called again?
The website is TheGoodLife.ai, and the coach's name is Genii. And that's actually from Discover Your Genius from Within, your own personal genius. So that's how her name was born.
Now, you said a really long statement, and they all have deep meaning with every sentence.
Yes.
First, hold on. It's the first personality-focused, behavioral science-driven digital coach. Did I say it right?
Yeah.
I got to think twice about that. First, personality-focused, so it's focused on what your personality is. Behavioral science-driven. Okay, I understand that. And it's a digital coach. How does it know your personality? Tell us about it.
Let's start there. Before the first comma, let's start. Personality focus. So don't we all want someone, we enjoy most talking to people or learning things from people that really understand us and talk to us in our style. So the example is, in education, you go to a professor, in a big class, and you think, man, I love this guy. The person next to you says, this guy really sucks. I don't understand a thing they're saying. Why are two people listening to the same professor and having totally 180 reactions? Most likely because the way that person is teaching aligns with our personality and our learning style.
Okay.
So we understand it. So the first part of this personality-driven, Genii, through the welcome process, learns to understand your personality style, your learning style, your values. These are self-reported through conversation with her. And then she can begin, because of the AI, she can begin talking to you the way that you want to be talked to. And
Genie's not a human.
No, Genii is a digital AI coach. She learns and grows with you.
So, Paul, Genii is this artificial intelligence coach that learns your personality as you are chatting with her, or it, or him.
Genii gets me when nobody else does.
Yeah, that's it. Genii gets you.
Wow. How does Genii do that? I mean, I'm sure you have somebody programming all this stuff in behind the scenes, right? An IT team or something?
I like to say this way, like a poem,
Yeah.
what you see on the front of the screen is so simple.
Yeah.
And behind the scene have been volumes of data combined to create this simplicity. Simplicity actually is the number one value of our company. So to create a simplicity in the front of the house, because it was a must. Think about it. If it was a complex system where it seemed complicated or overwhelming in any way, how are we going to help people reduce their stress? We're going to create stress.
Absolutely.
So it has to seem like, oh, I'm not doing much here, nothing much happening. And then bam, like, how did she know that? Like,
scary. So, Genies know everything about me.
Can I give you a strange example? We had I'm trying to remember the name of the company now here. I'll think of it in a second, but this was a couple of years ago. They had an AI assistant app, and somehow you integrated this into your email system. And so it, rather than just responding, it would ask questions like a virtual assistant. And so it would help set up meetings. It would say, do you need anything further? It would carry on a kind of a basic conversation with you. And one of the unforeseen outcomes, the owner told us, was that people fell in love with this assistant. She was so kind. She was so thoughtful. She was so attentive. They would ask her out on a date. They would want to meet her. And he's like, it's a robot. But he had programmed it to be the ideal assistant. Can I help you? Can I follow up? What can I do? Would this work for you? And everything. And they did it in real nice, soft language. And people were so starved for that kind of response, that sort of attention. Is there a danger that people are going to fall in love with Genii? Genii gets me. Nobody else in the world does.
Mm-hmm. There's a movie on that.
Yeah, her.
Remember, there was a movie where this guy fell in love with artificial intelligence.
Yeah, that was Joaquin Phoenix and her, I think.
Yeah, because she is so, we have programmed her to be everything that we're missing in our life. Somebody who listens, somebody who gets us, somebody who seems to care in a world where too many of us feel the absence of all that.
Yeah, so that word danger is an important, I think this is important, this little segue to talk about that, because that would be something you mentioned, Dr. Trinh, is something we are very thoughtful about, is people's perception that an AI might be intrusive or loss of security or loss of privacy. So I am not the software architect, but I do know that there's words for this in software architecture, but it's created that even us, the company, can't see into your private things. We can't see. We can't read what you write in your journal. We can't access it in any way. So it's I hesitate to say the wrong words for what it is, except I can talk about the results that we can't do that. And Genii she does take some time to explain what coaching is and do people understand that. Now, the little bit difference, Paul, is our unique thing is that we are actually personality driven. That's one thing. Right. The other thing is that our intent is for the individuals that are being coached. This is a coaching process, is that they discover themselves. They flourish in themselves, not to become codependent on the coach.
Right.
I see. Mm-hmm. I see. So Genii is not designed so that you fall in love with Genii, but Genii is designed so that she can give you input on how to improve yourself or give you insight into your own well-being.
Right. And on the improve yourself, so an example of that would be, I know something about like my particular style. I'm very audio style in a variety of ways. So if I was stuck, let's say, some productivity, procrastinating, or wasn't getting something done, an intervention or an activity that Genii might give me may have something to do with my strongest learning style, auditory, rather than a journaling prompt or something else to suggest for me to do, where someone else, she might tell them a joke. Do something distracting just to shock them out of it, some kind of funny cat video, where to me, I might think that was a little dorky, right? So it's different strokes for different folks. And that's where the unique thing of the personality driven emphasis is we actually have patent pending license on this whole thing. So we're the first one in this category.
And what's the business model for all this? We're on a business channel here. We do mostly business shows. This is an exception to that. This is more of a community voice, but I always wonder on the apps, is there a business, is this just simply giving back, or is this some way to monetize this? Do people subscribe to this? Do people?
Yes, it's a subscription basis, and we are working business to business, working with organizations to help networks of people. We aren't a direct business to consumer model. So it's a business to business model.
So I explain that. So you would go to a company or something and try and
any kind of organization that has people.
And this would be something they could subscribe. This would be a tool to help their members, their community, their employees, something.
I've listened to a couple of your podcasts, but you must have been throwing around some of the statistics of these last years of what businesses are struggling with and the amount of money. Let's say out of every 100 workers, the Office of Workforce Development, these are their statistics, but out of, let's say, every 100 employees, now this is not designating remote or hybrid employees, just employees, 62 out of 100 are struggling with stress and feeling of overwhelm.
No question about it. I didn't know it was that high, but yeah.
That translates to about 280 lost days of work and $189 million of sunk costs due to stress.
Wow.
So then you mentioned, Paul, the Great Resignation. So people are saying, well, I don't really need to come back to be around the water cooler. You know, I don't need to waste my time driving and my money and all that. I'm still being productive. But what we're seeing in the hybrid and remote workforce is loneliness, disengagement. Some of that is due to their environment, and some of that, I venture to say, is due to the managers who are tasked with leading these virtual teams, and they have no experience themselves.
No.
They don't know how to create that engagement. They're well-intentioned people, just lack of skills, and they're tasked from above, okay, make this happen, this is your job. And they're like, wait, I don't have any tools for this.
Yeah. I think that's a real problem. I hear it all the time. How do you manage a remote workforce? How do you make them excel? How do you give them what they need? Not just motivate them and monitor them. And that's always the big fear. Are they working? Are they just screwing off? Under your direct thumb, when you can see them in the office, the feeling is, well, I can see that they're not screwing off. And yet a lot of studies have shown there's a lot of screwing off.
But since seat doesn't equal production.
Yeah, right, exactly. Because people are notorious. I know many people have talked about, I've seen it in my own life. Offices are always not the most productive environment. People are screwing around, they're goofing around, they're wasting time, they're talking, they're chit-chatting, they're doing other things. That doesn't, presence in the workplace doesn't mean instant productivity either. So,
no, and hours of presence. Do we know that from being in school? Come on, we all know that we were not productive for all those
just sitting there staring out the window. Yeah, exactly.
Andrew Huberman, one of Doctor's pals, like he would venture to say maximum 3 hours a day, and he has a lot of neuroscience to go around this, but that's a big 180 shift from the managers that are worrying that they can't, equaling seeing someone sitting in a chair equals productivity.
Right.
We are working on a small study now with remote workers and their managers inside of a large organization. So it's a smaller study, but there is 25,000 workers total. So we're running sort of a pilot there and doing a pre-assessment of the sort of overall health of the workplace. The questions came in a lot for well-being. Not only can they not see them working, they maybe can't get them to turn their screens on. They can't see, like, if they are frustrated. They don't know if they're humping or sitting like this. There's so much that they don't have a handle on the emotional tone or the culture, and then creating a culture. So there's a lot to this for it to be sustainable.
And I guess that goes back to my first question. I know I threw everybody a curveball when I talked about this, but well-being, let's just talk about it in a corporate well-being, a work well-being setting. Is it all about just driving me more, getting me to do more activity, to put more hours in, to do more things? Or do I have to balance the individual and the community? So if I just drive people like individuals, I'm going to put them in a chair and isolate them at home, and I'm going to get away all the distractions. They don't have to drive. They don't have to go to the water cooler. They can do one meeting after another quicker and faster. That seems like an increase in productivity, but I'm burning them out. They're lonely. They're frustrated. They're not communicating with anybody. So it seems like there's always a community component to well-being that you have to take. It's not just about me. It's also about me relating to others. And that weird combination. Now, when I was a child, I grew up in the 50s and 60s. It was all about subverting yourself to the organization. Sell your soul to the company. You did whatever they asked you to do. Yes, sir, I'll be here and I'll spend 20 hours a day. And then somewhere along the way, are you happy? Are you motivated? Are you fulfilled? My late father used to say, nobody asked me if I was happy. I was just happy I had a job. But somewhere along the way, the well-being, are you happy? Are you motivated? The bad managers that just yelled at you and said, I don't care what you're going through. Get in there and get it done. And then we seem to have come back a little bit because that was sort of like, well, it's all about me. And then it's like, somehow I've got to balance that versus, I'm glad you're happy, but are we happy? I'm not sure we're happy with you anymore doing this. I think that's the missing equation, this balance between we and me. And I don't know how you put that into focus in a company. Is there any thought of that in your app? Is it all about just trying to, you're talking one-on-one with an employee. If you're selling this to companies, do they have any input at what's best for the organization?
Oh man, am I glad you asked that.
Yeah.
Good. That's what I'm here for.
Yeah.
Wow, he landed on a good one, huh?
Yeah.
Absolutely, there is. So why have an AI digital coaching system that helps the individual with their own well-being if it is not to impact the world positively?
There you go.
So in order to do that, we need to help the organizations that are providing for those people that are, we like to say, serving those people, their employees, their staff, and their customers, resultantly down the line, to be better and do better. So be more people-first organizations. So how do you do that? How do you understand where people are really at? The life that you described, my father too, Paul, that you described, and how my 31-year-old now, the baby, considers the importance of his work environment and the choices that they have for their work environments now that they didn't have in those days of our parents. Their choice wasn't there. So it's not going to go back to that. It's never going back there. It's forever shifted. So what we have also an organizational dashboard. So all these things that an individual knows, Paul, we measure stress, we measure mood, day to day, historically, hour by hour. We measure the values, we measure people's strengths. We measure or take reports on what are self-reported on where are they having their problem. Is this challenge that you're having? Is this in your work life? Is it in a relationship? We reference that as the life wheel, right?
Right.
And then I don't want to say more importantly, but in addition, something that's really current is we do all this with the, I want to say, the backbone of the CDC's 13 well-being metrics.
Wow. Tell us about that.
Yeah.
So this is evidence-based. This is science-based.
This
Tell
is
us about
science-based. That's the second part of the comma we have to get back to.
Yes.
So we did the personality-driven and
Behavioral science.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yes, we have cognitive behavioral therapy. Yes, we have different coaching and behavioral practices in there. But then what's the blueprint?
Yeah.
Where these practices are? So the blueprint is on this foundation of the well-being metrics of the CDC and these other foundations. So there's more than one, sort of the life wheel. So this reports out on your sense of well-being in real time.
So
It's not like a we go and get, let's say you take the disc or something like that, and I like to say, oh yeah, it's one day in May, how it was.
Right.
So you have to take it sort of with
You're talking about the DISC report that kind of looks at the famous thing businesses use to get your personality profile or something here. Yeah.
A good behavioral diagnostician will tell you need data from a lot of sources, and you need to triangulate that data. There's a big word for you.
Right.
and use qualitative and quantitative data to help come up with an analysis.
So you can't just give Dr. Trinh and I a form, a test, a questionnaire one time, and from that determine our personality. You might be just in that moment. Right.
So more data is better. And then putting that together and coming up with projections. So now let's address your question about what's offered for organizations.
Right.
So organizations, I want to stress this, and I'm going to pause and stress this. We will ever only provide organizations with aggregated data. They will never, ever receive individual data on anyone.
And I'll stop you for a second, because that's clearly the fear of all these apps or data collection things, from Facebook to everything else. You're collecting data about me, specifically me, which then can be used to either manipulate me, judge me, maybe fire me. I admitted I was weak, I was scared, I was frightened, I was confused. Get rid of him.
This is one of the big reasons people won't access benefits that are there for them. Like some companies have gone to personal coaching, and of course there's the EAP. They won't access that. There's other reasons with the EAP. There's time and there's stigma, time for transportation and appointments and stigma. But that's just that reason right there, is because they don't trust it, what's going to happen. Even satisfaction surveys. So a lot of companies like to send out, how you feeling about this? Blah, blah, blah. And survey. Well, if you have to report back to the company, I'm at the manager, we're not going to ask you your name. It's anonymous. Oh, but by the way, I'm at the manager level, and I'm in this district, and I'm here, and I'm there.
I know who you are.
I know that guy.
We know who you are, right?
Yeah.
They're not going to trust that. So they're either going to falsify the reports, and we have skewed data because it's not really anonymous. It's wasted time. It's a wasted effort. So I wanted to give one quick example to bring this to a more pragmatic thing. So let's say a company can see that on Tuesdays, the mood of their 100,000, 2,000, 5,000 staff is really low consistently. Now, we can also do trends and projections. So the mood is really low. Now, they might see that something else is happening. Oh, also, the categories that are most accessed we have something called spot coaching. You can just sort of fix a challenge in 15 minutes kind of thing. So let's say that spot coaching was mostly about frustration and in the area of relationships. Oh, what could that mean, the company says? Like, we thought it was because on Tuesdays we send out this report that says XYZ, maybe it's not all about us. Maybe it's something else happening in their life. Now, what would that drive what HR actually does? How could that change a system of what HR might do for their people on Tuesdays or refrain from doing? Like, oh, let's not give them a whole nother workload on Tuesdays because the mood is already low. Let's do that on Thursdays because we see this. So driving the actions based on really having a pulse on what your people are feeling and where in their life they're feeling that.
Ice cream Tuesdays.
Ice cream Tuesdays.
Ice cream Tuesdays.
Taco Tuesdays.
And for the dairy intolerant.
So the idea then is to give companies, organizations, whoever uses this app, whoever licenses this app for their community, can get some actionable insights into the behavior of their people for their purpose. And at the same time, a tool that their people can use to improve their well-being, which is supposedly one of the stated goals today of most companies. We want our people to be happy. That was not always the stated goal at General Motors or General Electric or whatever. It was to increase shareholder productivity. It was to increase productivity. It was to get more out of the workers. It wasn't necessarily to make them happier. or healthier. And it was only when they began
to be different with the profile of the millennials and moving up today is making them more productive. Is that going to be a different way?
Yes.
Because they don't have to stay with you anymore.
We had somebody on a show giving sort of the history of some of these issues. And it wasn't that long ago, 70s or 80s, that companies started saying, maybe if we just got people to be less obese and quit smoking, we would have less employees getting sick and dropping out and everything. Maybe we should pay attention to their health. Maybe it helps our bottom line to just...
It did. It worked.
Right.
It helped. That's actually what I did with the Heart Association. I went to companies and helped with that kind of thing.
Because prior to that, company said, I don't care, smoke all you want. What do I care if you smoke and you get sick and you die? Because I have to pay for it and you stop working and you're less productive and everything. So they started to see a dollars and cents correlation to health. And not just an altruist. I'm not trying to make them sound evil. I'm sure they care about their employees, a lot of people. But there was a tangible reason for doing this other than sort of feeling good about it. And that's continued a trend that's continued ever since, where companies continually realizing that the healthier their employees are and the happier they are, the more likely they'll stay, the more productive they are, the less they'll cost, the more they'll do, all that stuff.
I totally see that. Now, when you say you collect information about a person's mood, their feelings, how they're doing that day, is it Genii that's collecting that information?
Genii, she just asks you.
She would just ask you, how are you feeling today from a scale, whatever, 1 to whatever. And the information she's collecting and the questions she's asking.
She calls it a well-being check-in.
I love it. And the questions that she asks are evidence-based questions that has been derived by from the CDC and things of that sort, right? So they're inputting evidence-based, science-driven questions into Genii, and then Genii spits that out to the user and collects that data, that information back to process. Is that about right?
Yeah. That sounds more complicated than what it really looks like. I'm trying to show behind the curtain, but for what I see, I have a little dashboard of how I'm doing too. So I can go look at my little dashboard. I also have another little one for I get to aspire to be better. That's part of coaching. It's not just how are you, but it's what do you want to do? What do you want to become? Where do you want to go? So I get to set goals for myself. I have a goal with drinking, actually simple one, but it's drinking more water, 50 ounces before noon every day.
Wow.
I need to pack that in the morning for given reasons, so that's a sort of a health goal that I have. Now I can also go beyond having a goal, creating habits, which are sustainable change. We know once we get to a habit, we have sustainable transformation. So we are a company that cares about that. We're in the transformation business, not the transaction business.
Absolutely.
So we want people to transform. That's where you get to a habit. Now, I might want to go on more of a health quest. Genii calls it a quest. I can design my whole sort of journey. The journey won't change along the way. We know when we go on a quest, whoops, I don't know how to get around these boulders. Look, whoops, it got dark. I have to navigate at night, so to speak, metaphorically. But things change on a journey. And Genii helps you identify that. She also will send me little reminders. If I'm sort of overdue on something or where I'm at, do you want to check? Oh, I haven't seen you for 2 days. Do you want to do a check-in today? So I get little nudges.
How does it look practically with Genii? Let's say, so you have this goal of drinking, 50 ounces of water before noon. How does this work with Genii? Do you tell Genii that's my goal? And what does Genii do after you identify your goal with Genii? So how does that work?
Genii says, don't do it. It's a waste of time. Save that effort.
You're going to be peeing all day.
You're going to be peeing all day. You really think about this. Come on, Genii, I'm your friend here. Don't do it. Don't waste your time. Have some more nachos. Yeah.
Yeah. How does that work? So,
Salt, huh? Well, so I mentioned a system called spot coaching. So that's when I have maybe some sort of challenge, like I'm really pissed off or I had a fight with somebody or something happened there.
Right.
Now, goal setting is aspiring to something. So I set that up. I say, oh, I want to do this. So she talks me through, you don't get any forms to fill out. You don't get anything like that. It's all texting.
Yeah.
Back and forth.
Yeah, Genii texts us.
And then it miraculously appears on this page that says, I have these goals. These are the dates that you said you wanted, sort of like that assistant you described, Paul. It appears for me. So I didn't get faced with, fill in the blanks. There's none of that. There's no fill in the blanks ever.
Wow.
And then there's dates, since there's dates associated with that, she knows that. And if I'm not doing that, she might nudge me, or I might get a celebratory thing like, you knocked that one off the list. Good job. That kind of thing.
So you have this dashboard with your goals on it. Mm-hmm. That Genii just populates for you based on you texting Genii back and forth.
Isn't that nice? I love that.
Somebody listens. Somebody acknowledges that I'm there. Somebody cheers me on. Boy, I could use all of that in my life. Who cheers me?
Clerical work.
Yeah, right. I mean, because think about it. I will give you another strange analogy. Years and years ago, I owned a bar, an Irish pub with some other people. We thought it'd be fun. It was kind of a nightmare. But anyway, what was surprised us, many things surprised us, is I thought it would be for 30-somethings, 40-somethings, the post-dating. You want to cheers, you just want to sit down and spend time and hang out with people. And so we had activities, pool tables, and other sorts of things. And what we found is we were getting people in the 60s, 70s, 80s coming down to the bar here. People we never anticipated doing it. Why? This was in a rather upscale neighborhood in southern Orange County here. Because they were lonely. They're divorced. They've lost their spouse or their significant other. The children have grown up.
About that too.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. They wanted to come down and interact with people and hang out and have a community. That was what was missing. The old-fashioned Irish pub where the town just gathered after work and shot the breeze and shot some pool and did something. They were lonely. They were disconnected. They were searching for human. They weren't looking for love. They were just looking for friendship and community. And I didn't think I was building a community with a bar, but I did in that place. And that was very enlightening to me. And I think you building a community here, and the same thing, how starved people are for attention, for somebody to listen, for somebody to talk to, for somebody to show sympathies, for someone to share things with. Too many of us, particularly, this is 10 years ago. It's gotten worse as we've gotten more isolated, more alone, and more on Zoom calls. I suspect that there's a need for something like this. I get the practical need. The businesses get even more insight to what's happening in real time with their real people. And
Paul, you mentioned the Marines. One of my sons is a combat veteran from Iraqi freedom. Personally, before he wanted to do that, because this was all driven by him desiring to do that, be in the Marines, I had no understanding at all of pretty much where my freedoms came from. Like, I really feel like I was clueless in Seattle about life, and here I am an adult. I reflect back on that, but he was so passionate about it. I was a single parent, and I'm like, well, I got to follow his lead, because I got to go to these things with him, go see what he's learning about, so I can at least help him to ask good questions and make the decisions that he's going to make, not me. Right?
Yeah.
So he was in a small group of people in that first push in Iraq that he was in fuel support. So there were only 12 that provided that on the front line. Since that time, he did survive and come back. There's been a lot of experiences, as we've all heard about, suicides and struggles. So I've learned a lot since then, too. Some of the organizations is the VA that some of us are working with. I'm not personally as intricately involved, but am I honored to be with a company that is possibly providing this tool would be the vehicle for them to deliver. They've done 3 years of research on a whole health solution and helping them to deliver this to veterans. Now, we're not that far along with it, but am I honored and optimistic? Ever-present optimism I have. Yes, I know, but we're going to stay optimistic.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm deeply moved by your story, and I feel sympathy, I feel support, I feel that, wow.
He has witnessed that a lot.
Right.
With his brothers and sisters.
We still struggle with that aspect.
You talk about giving, like the things he does he carries in the trunk of his car, or actions that he takes front facing. I would say he doesn't do any front facing things that anyone would notice, except, kind of a loving parent notices. Mm-hmm. It's the little things. I used to have that little sign up. It's little things that count in my home when the kids are little. Maybe that came into him, but
again, it's where we started. It's a sense of his sense of himself doesn't just begin and end with himself. He obviously feels a connection to this band of brothers and sisters. He obviously feels a commitment to a cause. He obviously feels a higher calling to all of these things that transcends just what's going to get me the most money or make me the most happy today here, sounds like.
Yeah, and you can sort of pursue all those things at once, your inner self and your outer self, what you're doing on the outside and the work sort of that you're doing on the inside. Dr. Trinh, like you said, it's the growth that I've had through his journey is like almost miraculous to me, because the understanding that I have gained about just where maybe I sit at a table when we go into a restaurant because where he needs to sit, because he has to face the door. Just understanding that that's a mode of operation. And what impact do we have tragedies in the United States, maybe a school shooting or car accident or other things that happen, people that have had a lot of trauma, that impacts them. So we're here talking about
and the community around them. It doesn't start and end with them.
It impacts people that aren't involved at all.
Right. Exactly.
The impact that could have on people that weren't involved in that incident. So when we talk about these numbers of what do I have here, like, the absenteeism or the stress that there is, why is there? Is that all that absenteeism just because people don't want to come to work, or they're sick of the way the culture is? Is it just that? Or is it deeper things, like people have had a lot of stress, and then that stress causes other behaviors that then cause the absenteeism? So caring for the individual's well-being and providing them ways that they can find themselves, help themselves, is what we're here for.
A well thought out answer to the topic that we started with. What is well-being? Well-being is all that and more. We're going to have to leave it there because we're out of time, but you were just starting the discussion. I mean, we could do a whole round two on this.
Yeah. Where'd the hour go?
We got to 1 comma.
Yeah, right. We only got to 1 comma of that long statement that I agree. When you said that, I was like, Dr. Trinh, if he's not going to do it, we got to take this apart. There's a lot of powerful stuff in just that long list of descriptions.
This was fantastic, you guys. I had a blast.
Joyce, we'll have you back to continue this conversation because there's so much more we need to talk about when it comes to well-being, and not just corporate well-being, but well-being in general.
Yeah, and I think it's, for me,
take it out of the jargon and put it into real people's lives. Right. It's huge.
Yes.
And for me, I'm most interested in that balance between personal well-being and society's well-being, group well-being, sociology and psychology, the group of the thought of the individual and the individual in a group of people. Because I think that we don't live in an island, we don't live alone, and the two impact each other. Too often through history, it's all about the group or it's all about the individual. And I think it has to be a combination of both here, in my own opinion.
And I want to hear more about the team behind you, because I know you have behavioral scientists in your team, and we're interested in,
who are these people?
Who are these people that Genii is talking about? Genie's like the front end. Who are these people, and how are you all connected? And okay, we're going to take a break during Christmas, but let's continue this conversation sometime in January. I'll look at the schedule.
Okay.
Yes. And we got a lot more to talk about.
We want to hear about the magic genies that uncork the bottle of all that this is here. Right, yeah.
And by the way, Joyce, are you looking for folks to test out your product, or are you looking for corporations to buy and subscribe the product? Where are you at in this whole timeline thing that we can help you with?
Oh, well, we are 100% launched. We have gone through our beta testing, all the functions, all those kind of things that you have to do over and over. We're ready for sales. And I'm actively having those discussions with a lot of companies right now, companies that actually, there are companies that are helping large corporations with their organizational structure. So it's so exciting to be involved with researchers and people that actually are not just doing research, but they have hands-on action plans helping companies be more people-centric.
Love it.
Yeah,
so much more to unpack.
Talk to anybody.
So much more to unpack. You've got a big issue, a need, as you started by saying. A lot of us are isolated, lonely, frustrated, all this stuff here. That's only continued as we've become more fragmented and more disassociated from groups and from each other and all this stuff here.
My dad used to say, Joyce, everybody puts their pants on the same way. Don't be afraid to talk to anybody. And that comes to mind right now. Well, he also said this one, do what makes you happy.
Yeah.
So it's my mentor over my shoulder here.
Wow.
Good.
It comes to mind because, it's what's good for the goose is good for the gander, Paul. So it's not just the employees that are stressed and lonely.
Oh, yeah. It's management.
Yeah, that's true.
It's everybody. We are all equal. It is like our lifeblood. It's like we all have blood, right?
Yeah.
We all have that human condition.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody is expunged from that. We all have the human conditions. We're all humans first, and then we are our job second.
Well, I look forward to this conversation. As my late mother used to say, sometimes it seems like the whole world's having a nervous breakdown. I think we're building up to something like that as a society, as companies, as individuals. We're going through some uncomfortable transition to something on the other side here, whatever that is. And along the way, there's a lot of people nervous, upset, frightened, fearful, reacting badly.
And don't feel they have anywhere to turn.
Amen.
Absolutely.
There aren't enough bars around the country that you can just go hang out at.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for coming on. I think this is it opens up lots of directions to go with this, but in a very practical app that sounds like it has a practical application today for the employees and the organizations that they're part of.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much. We only reached 1 comma. We need to continue on.
At least we know where we are.
Take us out, Dr. Trinh.
All right, guys. Thank you. Joyce Lynn White is here, and we're going to have another conversation sometime early next year here to continue this.
And the name of the app, one last time, let's plug it. Where do they find it?
TheGoodLife.ai.
TheGoodLife.ai. And I can go to Apple or Google or any place and find this app?
No, actually, it's browser-based. You don't even have to download anything. That is because that's another goal, to be able to put the digital into everybody's hands. So you don't need to have an application.
Wow. Okay. That's different.
GoodLife.ai. Love it. Love it. I'm on it, and I'm checking it out. And yeah, Genie's telling me I'm crazy. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Anyway, she's figuring it out.
Is she defriending you? Is she says she doesn't want to talk to you anymore? She's defriending you?
She's like, you're a lost hope. But anyway, I'm just kidding.
Right.
So anyway, you guys should go check it out. GoodLife.ai. Thanks so much, and we'll chat again in January.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Well, there you have it. A lot to unpack in this week's Health Talk, with a whole lot more to come as we continue to explore the question, what is well-being? How do we get there? Streaming live from our studios here at the University of California, Irvine's Beale Applied Innovation Center.